Joining me now to discuss this and more is the Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis. Mr. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us. Woefully inadequate. What do you think?
Well, I think we've got to remember we've just seen coming through from the Chancellor a package that's worth about £22 billion of support for people. That doesn't, of course, change the fact that this is a difficult period. We're seeing that with the pressure on energy prices globally. We're seeing that on the pressure we're seeing across the economy as we're coming out of COVID. And we recognise that. That's why the Chancellor took the actions he did in the statement just the week before last. And it's something that as a government we always keep under review. And we did through COVID. We put the support in that the country and the people and businesses needed. And we will continue to keep these things under review, to do everything we can within the context of what is achievable in terms of what the government can do.
You mentioned COVID, and an argument being made is that you did so much during COVID, and yet for this, choices were made and you're not doing as much as you could.
Well, one of the things the Chancellor and the Prime Minister and all of us in government have to continually look at is the picture right across the board. So yes, as we came through COVID, I think we have shown as a government we will do everything we can to stand by people, to support people and businesses across the United Kingdom, and we will continue to do that. We've got to also, as I say, in that whole picture, look at the balance of things, because obviously we're at a position at the moment where, with what we've done, the unprecedented support through COVID, we've now got a position where the government's got very, very high borrowing rates. That does have an impact for people in the medium and long term as well, because obviously that borrowing at some stage you have to pay interest on that. That has to gradually be repaid. And we've got to get the balance right with that. At the same time, doing what we can to give people support where there is a global pressure. And we know there was a global pressure on energy prices even before Putin's invasion of Ukraine. That has obviously had a further impact on costs of living across the globe, energy not least of all. So that's why we've put this package in. That, as I say, it's worth about £22 billion. We've seen just this week, and I think it was just yesterday actually, the increase in the national living wage has a beneficial impact for people. The change in the threshold has a beneficial impact for people, both worth about £1,000. So we've now seen actually the biggest reduction in tax as a package that we've seen for about a quarter of a century. And we're putting support into local authorities, reducing fuel duty, all of these things to try and give people the support we can up against that pressure that we're seeing globally and across markets.
It is support that you've given, and you're throwing these big numbers around, and yes, they are very big, but at the end of the day, this is about people, and people's lives will be put at risk.
Well, that's why we're putting the support in. Look, I absolutely appreciate, we all do, the challenge on this. All of us are affected by energy prices. I know even this week, where I live, we're on oil-fired heating. I've seen that change directly in the price of oil and actually the ability to get it. At home, my family went a few days where we had no oil, just waiting for the supplies, and seen the very big increase in price on that. But as I say, in government we will do everything we can to give people support with the balance of what is going on in the wider economy and making sure we're continuing to invest and spend in the public sector in the areas that people want to see it. That's why we've put that big package of support in. The Chancellor and the Prime Minister have both been very clear. We'll continue to look at this as we go through the year. We can't completely nullify the impacts of the global markets and global pressure on, for example, on energy, which is obviously the main focus at the moment for most people. But we will put in the support that we can, as and when we can, as I say, looking at across the board at what we're doing with the public's money.
If you're saying that you're doing everything that you can, why don't you tax the oil and gas companies who are making so much money? People have to decide between eating and heating. I know we use that phrase so much, but if you say that you are doing everything you can, why don't you tax them?
Look, I do understand why people look to that. I mean, the only thing I would say, Labour have been making this point for a while. What they're not able to answer, and I think is an odd situation, is the reality of what is happening in the energy market. This is, first of all, this is a global pressure. We're seeing this around the world. So what we do with companies here in the UK won't have the impact of changing the whole global energy market prices. But we should also remember that those energy companies here in the UK are already paying about 40% tax. That's roughly double what most sectors in the UK economy are paying. They employ hundreds of thousands of people in the UK. We're looking at them, and they are investing hugely in more work to develop more energy and produce more energy. They need the income that they have to make those investments and the part they
These are
play in the
huge
economy paying
profits.
salaries. So a windfall tax on those companies won't necessarily have the impact on global prices that people think it will. It can have an impact on some domestic prices by taxing higher, a sector that is already very, very highly taxed. So although that is it sounds an attractive option, in the wider economic context, it doesn't really work. And that's why we've looked at what can we do that will have a beneficial impact directly for people in their pockets. And that's why this money, both the rebates on council tax, the increase in the national living wage and its threshold, are things that will mean that people have more money in their pockets to be able to manage the pressures that they're finding.
Well, if we're talking about people having more money in their pockets, why don't you restore the £20 a week uplift in universal credit? That would give people more money in their pockets, and £20 a week is a lot of money.
Yes, it is. But as I say, what we are looking at is the decisions we have to make around where we put that support. So we put that support in by reducing fuel duty, which is a benefit for everybody. That 5p reduction is something that everybody who's using fuel to get around, get to work and back, everybody will benefit from that over the next year. We're putting hundreds of millions of pounds into local authorities to help the most vulnerable people with the support that they need. Local authorities knowing best what they need in their area in terms of how to support people. We've put that increase in the national living wage. We've put the increasing in the national insurance threshold, so everybody who is earning and people on the national living wage will have an increase in their pocket, effectively partly through those tax reductions, but also through the increase in the national living wage. So very targeted at the people who are most in need.
Targeted at the people who are most in need, but Sir Keir Starmer has called it a pathetic response.
Well, look, Keir Starmer is going to play politics with this. He's already, as I say, come up with something he thinks sounds catchy with a windfall tax, but in reality, as I've explained, doesn't necessarily and doesn't really work and doesn't answer the problems. That's the benefit of being in opposition, I would say. In government, we've got to look at that wider picture to make sure we are building an economy, and the decisions the Prime Minister has made have meant we've now got one of, if not arguably, the fastest growing economy in the G7. That's creating jobs. We've got people back in work to the levels they were, if not higher, than they were pre-COVID. That, in the long term, is good for our economy. It's good for people's income and home personal security of finance. And we're putting these financial measures in place to support people. And we will keep that under review, as we did all the way through COVID. So we're focused on doing the things that practically work and make a positive difference for people every day, and looking at making the right medium and long-term investments for our wider economy and the jobs opportunity in the future.
OK, let's talk about Ukraine now. You did mention Ukraine. In the papers this morning, claims that Ukrainian forces have had success with what is Britain's most advanced portable missile system. Do you think that our help, although we haven't actually gone in there, is helping the Ukrainians?
Oh, look, yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that. Look, the Ukrainians themselves, both the President and the wider community, have been clear about the support that the UK, as part of that global partnership, have given. And I do think the Prime Minister and the team have led the way. Look, as Northern Ireland Secretary, I'm fortunate to see some of this work directly. Literally just yesterday, I was in the factory in Belfast that's producing some of those weapons that are being sent out to Ukraine. I think probably the ones you're just talking about. And the pride of people in Northern Ireland, and I know across the UK, of the support we're able to give is palpable. And I think it's the right thing to do. In the long term, it's the right thing for the West to support a free democracy, a sovereign democracy like Ukraine, and to do everything we can. It's such a barbaric situation, what we're seeing with what Putin has done there. It's absolutely abhorrent.
So what do you think we're going to do? Keep on doing what we're doing? More sanctions, more military aid? Is that what we're going to do?
Yes, look, I think we're leading the world at the moment in terms of sanctions and putting that pressure on the Russian economy. And one of the shames of this is, this is not about the Russian people. This is about Putin's regime and what he is doing. And we've got to put the pressure on them and show that their invasion will not work, will have negative impacts on their regime. And those sanctions that we've put in over 1,000 people and businesses across involved with Russia has that effect. The support we have given, and again, we led the way, the Defence Secretary and the Prime Minister very much leading the way at the very early stages of that lethal defence support that we have put into Ukraine, which they have been very grateful and put into very good use to defend themselves. And as I say, I'm very proud that a big part of that has been something that's come from the people and businesses in Northern Ireland that are producing that weaponry to give Ukraine the support that it needs.
Let's talk about Partygate. And Sky News understands those first fines have been sent out by email. We still don't know to who. Do you think we will ever know who has been fined, who will be fined? And do you think we have a right to know?
Well, I don't know what individuals they will do. The Prime Minister has been very clear, actually, and that if the Prime Minister were to be fined, he would go public with that. He'd be open about that. When fines are issued across a range of things that the police work on, that they don't put that in the public domain. It's a matter for individuals. That's just and the individuals involved in this are able to benefit from the same rule of law that anybody else would if they were fined. That's a matter for them. I don't know, before you ask, who has and hasn't been fined, but I can confirm that if the Prime Minister were fined, he would make that public.
And just the Prime Minister?
Well, as I say, it's a matter for individuals. As I say, what we don't know as well when we talk about these fines is whether it's a number of people or a number of fines. I have to, because obviously people could have more than one fine each, so we don't know the details of that. Obviously, the Met Police themselves are still continuing with their investigation. When that completes, we'll then have a final concluding report from Sue Gray to complete the work that she did. Obviously, she published that first stage report before the Metropolitan Police investigation really got underway. And that's the point at which we'll have the full facts to be able to have a wider conversation about what happened. But as I say, the Prime Minister, as I said before, has already previously outlined his apology to people for what happened, how things were handled. But we've got to let the Met Police and the Sue Gray complete their work to get that full picture.
OK, Mr. Lewis, thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.